Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Now, as you know, every so often I like to purchase broken graphics cards from eBay and see if we can get them working again. Today we're taking a look at this green PCB, a pretty horrible looking OEM GPU. I don't actually have the appropriate cooler for this. Now apparently this doesn't work at all, and if we were to plug it into the system in this condition, well, it's probably going to overheat in about 5 seconds and then it'll be dead anyway. So what I thought I'd do would be bodge a GTX 980 cooler on here, see if we can get it working, see what we actually have, and then test out its gaming performance. So according to the seller, it just doesn't work. Luckily I have this Windforce GTX 980. About 4 of the 7 screws line up from this heatsink, so we can sort of Frankenstein it onto this green card, but not before replacing the thermal paste. I also moved the thermal pads that were on the memory a little bit, just so that everything was covered up on the old card. So as you can see here, yeah, it doesn't look too aesthetically pleasing. The green PCB with the Windforce heatsink, it's pretty ugly, to be honest, bit of a Frankenstein's monster, but let's put it in the system and see what happens. So I slot it into my i5-12400F motherboard, open test bench here, and as you can see we did have a problem. First of all, we got a motherboard light. I believe this is a VGA light. This has happened before. After a couple more attempts, the system actually fired up straight into Windows updates, which I'm pretty sure I paused from within the settings, but you know, Windows being Windows, it just went ahead and updated the system anyway, so enough about that. After this, we booted into the desktop just fine, and the next thing to do is actually work out what this card is. So we'll right click on the little Windows icon here, go to Task Manager, and it turns out that we have a GTX 1080. Okay, this is an 8 gig card from about 2016. I think it's outdated in terms of driver support, and what I mean by that is that game ready driver support stopped, I think, late last year. This has sort of defaulted to older drivers anyway, as we can see, but it does appear to be working. We should test a few games though, just to see if it actually fires up. It says it's running in PCIe 2.0 mode. This is of course a PCIe 3.0 card, but when we run some games, this should automatically switch to PCIe 3 mode. Turns out this is a Dell OEM GTX 1080, and we've actually tested one of these quite a while ago on the channel. The first thing I did was attempt to run Battlefield 6. Now sometimes with broken graphics cards or cards that are listed as faulty, you might try and fire up a game and then you'll get a black screen immediately, or you'll get loads of artifacts all over the place, but it seems that Battlefield 6 actually launched. It did give us a driver warning though, so I thought I'd update these before continuing. I did get a little bit nervous again as we got to the splash screen and then the shader started loading, because there were a few freezes. I think this is just because of the shader compilation, but that said, there were a couple of moments where I thought, yeah, this card is definitely dead, or was about to die because it froze completely, but luckily we were able to proceed. I think for Battlefield 6 on a GTX 1080, a card that's probably approaching 9 or 10 years old now, well, I think it's best to go with the medium settings. So we're going to jump into the quality options here. We'll go with the medium preset. We won't change anything else, but I'll make sure that we are actually running at native resolution as well. Yes, we'll turn FSR off here, and we'll just keep anti-aliasing set to TAA with 100% res scale. This is actually a pretty good place to be with the GTX 1080 in terms of performance. We're getting at least 60 FPS here with the medium settings. The card seems to be running how it should be. The temperature is pretty good because we've got that beastie triple fan, a Windforce 980 cooler on here, so there are no issues with heat or noise, to be honest, and we seem to be approaching or hitting the maximum clock speed for the OEM GTX 980, sitting at just under 1900 megahertz here. We've probably got a little bit of room for overclocking as well because of the tri-fan cooler. Arc Raiders was a little bit scary as well, for the fact that it jammed a couple of times when starting, but again I think it was the shader compilation. But when you buy a broken card, you do sort of think, is the card just going to die sort of mid-game here, or mid-load? But no, it didn't. I actually set everything to high, perhaps a little bit ambitious, along with TSR set to 100% res, and this was fine for 60 FPS, just about. There were certainly some areas where we saw less than this, drops to the mid-50s. Has he seen me over there? That thing, whatever that is, giant mechanical spider thing? Yeah, I think the fact that he's gone like red in the front means that he's seen us. What am I doing climbing on a rock trying to escape? This was probably the worst hiding place I could have chosen. Even with all this kicking off on screen, we're still seeing around 60 frames per second. The 1080 of course is an 8GB GPU, but I think for the right price it's still certainly a good choice for 1080p gaming in 2026. If you are realistic with your expectations, and by that I mean don't crank all the settings up to high or ultra. So when it comes to Fortnite, I think we'll go with DX12. This should be a bit smoother than DX11 here. The card still seems to be working. It hasn't died yet, considering it was supposedly broken. I don't think it's done too badly at all. Right, we'll go with the high preset, but we'll turn off Nanite, which will turn off Lumen as well. That's probably a bit too intensive for the 1080. I'm getting confused because obviously this has got a 980 cooler on it now. But jumping into the game, and yeah, we're seeing well over 60 FPS. In fact, we're coming in at around 90 to 100 FPS overall. The exact averages will be up on screen here, but performance really isn't bad at all for this aging GTX 980, especially for a card that was apparently broken as well. So yeah, nice to see this one holding up here. In GTA 5 Enhanced, we can't make use of the newly added ray tracing options, so I just went with the very high graphical preset instead. The only things I changed was the depth of field effects, which I turned off because it's horrible in my opinion, and I also turned off motion blur again because I don't like it. With the very high settings, the game ran very nicely here with over 100 frames per second. Temperatures still remaining very cool, and the card is sitting very quiet as part of our open test bench as well. Resident Evil Requiem again requires a shaded compilation at the start, a few little freezes here and there, but it's more of a CPU intensive process. It's just that when the system was under stress and we've got a card that was listed as not working, I was sort of thinking, yeah, not quite sure what was going to happen. I wouldn't have been too surprised if the card just died. I think the best settings here are probably normal. We'll change the graphics quality, upscaling quality and lighting to normal, but we'll turn upscaling off. We'll start with FXAA and TAA here. This is just a brief test really to see how well it runs. In this pretty open street scene here with a lot going on screen, pretty intensive. Yeah, we're getting at least 40 FPS most of the time. I think our average is going to come back at somewhere around 50. In those indoor areas, those sort of corridor portions of the game, we're going to be getting plus 60 FPS with no upscaling, but a bit of FSR could push us over that 60 FPS threshold, I think, and that's worth considering with a 1080 in 2026 with new games. FSR is definitely a friend in cases like this. Overall, what started off as a dead card on paper, a dead board for 30 quid, turns out to be working. So sometimes it may be worth taking the risk, but I'm not going to sit here and recommend it, especially if you're on a tight budget. It's more of a sort of hobby thing to do. If you want a bit of fun and you like tinkering with things, it may be worth buying these listed broken cards, seeing if they work. I always like to try it and see if it does work, and now that it does, we can go out and get an appropriate cooler for it, because I'm not going to keep this sort of bodge 980 cooler on here that's hanging on with 4 screws. I always like to keep you up to date with things that I buy, whether or not they make for an entertaining video. And hopefully you've enjoyed watching nonetheless. Not the most exciting video in the world, I don't think, but I buy something like this and I always want to test it out. And I think I may as well always film the process too. So thanks as always, and hopefully I'll see all of you in the next one.